High blood pressure or hypertension is a silent killer with higher mortality rates when compared with malaria and cancer put together.
Hypertension is what we call a high blood pressure. This disease is a very serious one, but the unfortunate thing is that people who have hypertension, most people who have hypertension do not even know they have hypertension. And that is why all over the world it is described as a silent killer. And that's why it's very essential that a government enlightens the people properly.
In adults, all right, the number one cause of morbidity and mortality in adults in Nigeria is hypertension. That is the number one cause of people dying and getting sick in adults. Not in children, not in teenagers, but in adults. Anybody above the age of 30, it's the number one cause of people being in hospital, being in strokes. It reduces the workload, the workforce, and things like that.
Blood pressure can be defined as the measure of the force of blood against artery walls. When it rises to high above 140/90, the pressure causes damage to vital organs like the heart, kidney, brain, and even the eyes.
Hypertension is a condition that is characterized by elevation of the blood pressure. The normal blood pressure being anything not up to 140/90. People have different blood pressures, but research has shown us that once it's above 140/90, that pressure begins to damage the organs. So we doctors now insist that whenever your blood pressure is above 140/90, you need to see a doctor. That's why we have labeled it as hypertension.
Hypertension affects every single part of the body, starting from the head down to the toe. Basically, there are two types. You have what they call essential hypertension or primary hypertension, and the other one is secondary.
It's primary when there's a genetic history. The father of that patient has hypertension, the mother has hypertension. Indeed, if two parents have hypertension, the probability of that patient to develop hypertension is even higher. Okay? And it runs in family. Patients with hypertension who have primary hypertension are obese, they're fat, they are sedentary, they don't walk, they eat a lot, they don't exercise. Okay? So when you have characteristics like that, then you have primary. On the other hand, secondary hypertension is acquired and it can be cured if it is discovered early.
Hypertension is certified to be a leading cause of cardiovascular disease, a heart disease that leads to death.
Stroke is a complication. Heart attack is a complication. Kidney failure is a complication. And so that's why it's very essential for us as a government to do something, one, to enlighten the people, and two, to find a way of getting the people who contract disease to be treated.
Once your blood pressure is high, the pressure that supplies blood to all the organs, the kidney, the liver, is high. But we found that the kidney particularly is affected, the brain is affected, the heart is affected. And these three organs, if severely affected, can lead to sudden death. And that's why there's a focus on them.
The consequences of these complications are very, very serious to treat. They're very, very expensive. And in fact, once you have hypertension, you have it for life. And that's why it's essential for us as a government to let the people know so that you can take their own health seriously.
I can safely say most of the strokes I see are due to hypertension. Some are due to cholesterol, but a lot of them are due to hypertension. And that's from people not taking their medicines or people not knowing they had hypertension in the first place.
Stroke, that's the most common cause of complication of hypertension, where there is a burst, the artery supplying some areas of the brain bursts, or the blood within that area clots, and that area of the brain ceases to function. So the patient, we discover the patient cannot leave the arm, cannot leave the leg. Sometimes the patient cannot even talk because the area that subserves speech is affected. It can give you more acute conditions that affect the brain. For example, if the blood pressure rises very fast, there's a lot of blood going to the brain and few coming out. The brain swells and the patient can behave abnormally, almost psychotic sometimes. The patient can lapse into unconsciousness. And when you lower the blood pressure, the patient comes back to normal.
High blood pressure is probably number 1 or 2 cause of kidney failure in Nigeria. All right. So when your blood pressure is high, it damages the kidneys. Then the kidneys start to fail. After some time, you need to go on dialysis or get renal transplant.
Hypertension also affects the heart, and it's a common cause of heart attack. It's a common cause of heart failure. Heart attack means the heart is deprived of blood. Some areas, like the brain, some areas in the heart is deprived of blood, it dies, so the heart can no longer function properly, and so the patient can die suddenly. Or on a chronic basis, because of the constant pressure the heart has to pump blood against, the heart eventually fails. It's like walking. If you walk 24 hours, 36 hours non-stop, you get tired. So in heart failure, the patient gets tired, the legs swell, he coughs, he cannot move from here to there, he has palpitations and things like that.
Human activities and overlooking some aspects of our lifestyle, like lack of exercise, overweight, poor diet, and increased salt intake contributes to the rise of hypertension.
There are some things they call risk factors that are very, very common with hypertension. A lot of people who exhibit this, who have this, are very, very prone to have hypertension. One is diet. And the serious culprit is that a diet that is very, very high, in salt, will definitely give you hypertension.
Simply put, salt draws water. So when you have too much of salt in the blood, there is more water in the blood that is necessary. And the volume of blood is one of the factors that determine the blood pressure. I'm putting it very simply. So the more salt you take, the more fluid you have in your blood, and the higher your blood pressure.
The United Nations, WHO, have put up a body, and there are 32 countries on that list now that have formulated policies to reduce salt intake nationwide. Nigeria is not on the list yet, but I presume we shall soon be there. And in England, it is now mandated, if you go to a restaurant, they do not add salt to their food. So you have to add the salt yourself. And that has already started to show dividends in reduction in high blood pressure.
The effects of increased salt intake cannot be brushed under the carpet because it has been proven by research and documented to increase high blood pressure.
If you take a lot of salt, the chances are that you get hypertension. And if you reduce your salt intake, your level of blood pressure goes down dramatically. The experts have said it. If you listen to the experts, they will explain further on this.
When you take too much salt, you are adding workload to your heart, then the heart breaks down. It can't handle it. That is what it is. It's like you buy a 5 kV gen, 10 kV gen, and then you expect it to supply the whole of Lagos. It can't work. You have overloaded the generator. It cannot work. So you have to cut the load.
It is medically recommended that salt intake should not exceed 5 grams daily. This reduces high blood pressure by 5%, death from stroke by 16%, and death from coronary heart disease by 12%.
The teaching these days is that you shouldn't take more than a teaspoon of salt per day. This is what some people take in a meal, or even twice. You find people, they get home, their wives have cooked, they haven't even tasted the food, and they're already going for the salt shaker.
The average salt intake in the US and in Europe is about 5 to 6 grams a day in their diet, in the average diet, which they already think is too much. All right. In Nigeria, the average salt intake is about 12 grams. So you can see we are more than 5 times higher than we should be.
We have a lot of practices in the environment. All these seasonings we use have high salt content. What we use to preserve food, take for instance during Ilea, for instance, people kill rams, eronio. Eronio, they fill the salt and people take it. It's sweet, but again, it has its own consequences on the body.
However, it is also important to mention the hidden food, the salts that have hidden salts. Because a lot of people consume them not knowing that they're taking salt. If you go watch a movie, popcorn that you take is salted or sugared, okay? Tinned food are always preserved with salt. Any tinned food, bacon, ham, sardines, even vegetables that you get that in cans are preserved with salt. So if you're going to use them, it is advisable not to add salt. Okay? Soda water that people take and feel is water. The soda in soda water is salt. So these are things people must avoid.
All the fast food joints, salt. Chinese food, salt. Panla, stockfish, a lot of salt. Then the other places, plantain chips that we buy on the road, salt. Corned beef, salt. Sardines, salt. Potato chips, Pringles, all those things, salt. So there's a lot of things we don't know. You might not know you're adding salt to the food, but you take those things, you eat corned beef in the morning, then on the way to work, you buy potato chips, maybe yam chips or potato chips. And then at home now, you come, you say, let me go to the fast food joints, buy some of this, take some of father stew, and then we wonder why we're getting sick. So these are the places that we have salt. I'm not saying no salt. No salt is not possible. But we're on 12 grams. We need to come down to 5. We come down to 5, we will reduce the number of people dying in this country significantly. Number of people have strokes, you know, and that is a burden on society. Somebody has to pay for the hospital bill.
People prone to hypertension are advised to reduce salt intake due to the following reasons. A chance of salt sensitivity is high in hypertensive persons. There is likely some reduction in high blood pressure even when one is not salt sensitive. Antihypertensive medications are more effective when there is restriction of salt in diet.
It is also important to mention that potassium is another kind of salt which works against sodium, which is the salt we take as table salt. Potassium you find in vegetables and fruits. Now, if salt increases blood pressure, potassium helps to reduce blood pressure. So it's advisable for people to take plenty of fruits and plenty of vegetables. In fact, we call it the DASH diet now. Dietary approach to stop hypertension, DASH. And it means you must take plenty of vegetables and fruits and avoid meat or reduce salt and things like that.
Here are some key steps to help you reduce salt intake. General reduction in food consumption reduces the chances of more sodium because the more you eat equal to more sodium intake. Eat lots of fruits and vegetables. Choose natural foods and fruit and slightly processed food to reduce the need for excess salt. Canned fruits and vegetables should be washed and drained before eating. Natural herbs and spices like ginger or garlic reduces the need for more salt in the food. Identify food with high sodium and eat less of them. For instance, white bread, that is agege bread, sausages, processed cheese. Make sure you check food label before purchase and when in doubt, verify from a classified medical practitioner. Preserved foods like salted meat and locust beans, iru, should be cut down. Reduce cooking methods that totally depends on salting, such as roasting, grilling, and boiling. Mix salted and unsalted food. For instance, stew prepared with salt should be taken with rice cooked without salt.
The advice is reduce as much as possible the amount of salt we take. And the best way to reduce this, take a lot of fruits and vegetables. Those are not high in salt, they are good for our body. And again, like banana for instance now, you have high potassium, which is good for the heart. And again, let's adopt proper lifestyle, do exercises to reduce being overweight. Exercises are very good for the heart and for the body itself. The more you do exercise, the lower your blood pressure goes down. You should stop smoking. if we've not started smoking already, it's better you stop smoking. If you can't stop smoking, reduce the number of cigarettes you take in a day. There are other smoking cigarette alternatives that can use to reduce this. Like I said, hypertension affects every part of the body, and the consequences are very grave. They're very expensive to treat. You have it for life. So it is in our best interest to try as much as possible to reduce all those things that will give us hypertension.
You can learn to enjoy food with less salt by retraining your taste bud. You might feel your food is tasteless. When you start to reduce salt intake, don't worry. It takes 3 weeks for your taste bud to adjust to this new healthier lifestyle. Abiding to these simple rules means doing your blood pressure a good favor. Making very small changes could be life-saving. Take responsibility for your health. Èkó ní bàjẹ́ o.